Actors, we've all got issues, so let's talk about them. I'm Juan Ayala, and welcome to Actors with Issues. Each week, we bring you interviews with actors from across TV, film, and Broadway, taking many deep dives into their careers and getting into the successes, the struggles, and of course, the issues that they face as actors. That's enough about us. Let's dive into the episode. Today's guests are three of the stars of The Play That Goes Wrong, currently playing at New World Stages in New York City. Please welcome to the stage Adam Petherbridge, Trevor Braun, and Brent Bateman. Adam, Trevor, Brent, thanks so much for being here. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks
Thank
for having
you.
us.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Carmen. Yeah.
So, firstly, hats off on a terrific show. I did get to see it a couple of weeks ago and was just laughing nonstop. It was very, very needed. So I'm curious, before we dive into the issues, have has anything gone wrong that was not on the queue list so far? Have you guys experienced any types of mishaps in the show that are not scripted?
I think that with any show that performs live 8 times a week, there are going to be things that go wrong every single time the show performs. Small things, little things, but big things too. Our show is so rife with moving parts that, of course, those things happen.
Mm.
But because of the structure of our show, we're able to get away with it when it does. We can play it off as part of the show in a lot of cases. Do you guys want to address anything specific about that?
I mean, there's so many things, little things,
Yeah.
that the gun fell apart on stage
Okay.
yesterday. Stuff like that happens all the time. Pieces of the set every now and then. The last week, I think I've had 3 different times where I've had to pull something that's been half broken, fully break it so that it doesn't potentially hurt anybody, and then throw it off stage kind of candidly whenever I can.
Yeah, I mean, and even with things as small as like I've like fumbled over lines and can't get it out of my mouth, and it's just great because the audience actually eats it up. Like they love it. It makes for an even more sort of like authentic experience for the people watching. So
Mhm.
yeah, they're constant.
It's rare, but for safety's sake, we occasionally have to hold the show uh, for things that you wouldn't think would stop the show, but they are safety concerns. For instance, when large pieces of the curtain are meant to fall down and they don't, well, that means that big piece of heavy set is just sitting there without anything really holding it. So for safety's sake, we actually have to hold the show. And it's funny how our actual crew coming out and fixing the set gets the biggest laugh of the night.
Yeah, because the audience is like, of course this is
Of course,
Mhm.
of course.
And looking back at any of your past theater experiences, what comes to mind as maybe the biggest mishap that you've experienced? I've had props roll off stage and into the audience. We're just like, well,
Well, a couple months ago in November, October, early October, I broke a rib doing the show,
oof.
and didn't know that I had a broken rib, but I basically had small stress fractures, and I kind of opened them up by accident while we were doing the show. So I did the last 2/3 of the show with a broken rib. And so that's the biggest one for me, I think.
Pretty big.
Yeah, yeah.
We had a situation, and it's since been resolved with our trick stunt platform in the show, where it went from its it falls very safely in at 3 different levels. And this is just after we reopened from the pandemic. That machinery wears out, things break down on the motors and the brakes, et cetera, and it went from its full upright safe position all the way to the floor in one move. And of course, we as actors weren't ready for that, and that was a very scary ride. The Just like if you are crashing your bicycle, everything turns into slow motion. That tiny thing that took about 3 seconds to actually happen seemed like 5 minutes, where a million thoughts go through your head. I have to keep all this furniture from going into the
Oh man.
audience. I have to protect myself. I have to protect my fellow actors. All of those things somehow manage to pop up in your head within 3 seconds. That's probably the biggie for me on this show. And of course, that's since been resolved. There are multiple safeties in place as a result of that little mishap, and fortunately no one was hurt during that as well.
I'm relatively new to the show in comparison to Brent and Adam. So a lot of the sort of major mishaps that have occurred have happened luckily when I'm not there, but it doesn't escape me that I'm constantly afraid of them occurring at any moment. So, but luckily I've avoided some of the big ones, but I am hopefully prepared for if they do ever come around.
Mm.
Have a little bit of an informal kind of group bet together that if we can get through 8 shows in a row where absolutely nothing goes wrong, then we all get to kind of treat ourselves to a special meal or something. We'll go out and celebrate. And I think over the past 3 weeks, we've been trying to track. I don't think we've ever gotten past maybe 2 in a row where
I think we maxed
the
out at 2
smallest,
recently.
the smallest thing counts as it didn't go completely according to plan. So, the smallest little hiccup, someone's shoe falls off or something like that, and it brings us back to 0.
Yeah, hit the reset.
Yeah, exactly.
And Brent, you mentioned so you were with the show since before the pandemic?
That's right. I was a part of the original cast at New World Stages.
Mm.
So we're coming up on our 1000th performance very
Wow.
soon that we've been in that space.
Awesome. And Adam, what about you? How far back do you go with the show?
I started in 2019, the fall of 2019, with the national tour of the
Gotcha.
show. And then we were shut down in March of 2020. And then I rejoined this company as a emergency cover around a year ago. And then a few months later, I stayed on permanently as Dennis first for a few months. So I played the Dennis character for about 4 months. And then transitioned back into Max, which is what I had been playing on tour. And I've been doing that now since September.
Gotcha. And Trevor, you joined recently, you just said. How long have you been with the show now?
Yeah, it's been about 4 months now. I started like mid-September of 2022.
Awesome. And I'm a firm believer that with every role you have, whether it's like a two-line co-star on TV or obviously like the lead of a show, that there's always a lesson to be learned in the process. So what would each of you say is the biggest lesson that you've learned being part of the show?
There are many.
Hmm.
I think that the main thing that I carry with me, and this is a good thing just sort of in general as an actor or artist, is to be as fearless as you can.
Mm.
That's what this show has taught me, that you can hype yourself up before the show, and if you think about it too much, you won't ever enter because you're so terrified of all of the things that can happen to you out there. How not just dangerous things, but foolish things. You don't want the joke to fall flat. You don't want to slip and fall. So there's this freedom that comes from letting that go and understanding that the best art comes about when you just run full force right into it, and don't worry about looking like an idiot. Don't worry about your dignity, because that's where the real humanity lies.
Mm.
I think
Which is a lofty idea for a silly farce, but I think that our show has a lot of heart in it because of that, because of these this ragtag group just persevering. Like, it's the human story of no matter what happens, you can finish it, you can do it, you can complete the task.
Yeah, I would have said the end result is the same, basically what Brent just said, but that trust is a huge part, huge lesson that I've learned, is just to trust the process, trust yourself, trust the people that you're on stage with, because then you can really just let it all hang out, and you fail a lot along the way, but that failure is where you get all the good stuff from. I'm a firm believer in 10,000 hours, that theory, and every minute is another step towards 10,000 hours, no matter what happens in that minute.
Yeah, for something that I think Dennis, the kind of the character has taught me, and I've learned from him, is approaching stuff with like an open heart as much as possible, and even the things you might not understand and the things you're kind of inexperienced with, if you just come at it from a perspective of like, I'm going to try my best no matter what. And it might, really end up badly, and it might end up bruised and broken. But hey, I'll, I'll, I'll hopefully have a new group of friends, and I'll hopefully walk away learning something new. And even if I don't, at least I'm not dead.
Or concussed, or with a broken rib, or any,
Yeah, exactly.
all of the above. And with the name of our show being Actors with Issues, what comes to mind as an issue, a career obstacle, anything that you have experienced in your careers that you could shed some light on for our audience of young actors?
Well, I think maybe the biggest thing that our industry struggles with, from my point of view, is access. I think there are a lot of good actors, great actors, who never get an opportunity to showcase what they truly have, because it's hard to let everybody have a moment. It's hard to give everybody a chance, and I think we end up with a lot of the same people getting work, and the same, theater companies hiring the same people, and that kind of stuff, having their go-tos and that kind of stuff, because those people are great. And I've worked in a lot of those theaters that do that, and I've been that go-to for a lot of theaters. And obviously, just with our show, I mean, it's so much better and easier for us to have somebody who's already done the show to come in rather than finding new people. But when we can give people that access, that moment, to showcase what they have, then I think we end up profiting a lot more from it, and we end up with success, like having Trevor join us. He wasn't here a few months ago, had never even seen the show a year ago, right, Trevor?
Mm-hmm.
And now we get him every night, and he's amazing. So I think that access thing has always been a hard bit to navigate in our industry.
You get called upon, so many of us have worked sort of the blue collar round of regional theaters, nonprofit theaters, all that sort of stuff, where you're making your equity weeks, and you're a professional actor, but you're not financially thriving as a result of your craft and everything that you've invested in. But there's this stance that you're lucky to get that kind of work, and the truth is that you are, because it is really rewarding work. What I'm often asked, having been in this little gem of a show for 4 years now, is, well, okay, so what did you do? And what I did is completely arbitrary and meaningless compared to any other actor coming up. My path is a very specific path. I'm lucky that it led me here, but it wasn't always pleasant. It was a lot of hard work. It was a long time. I'm older than everyone else in the show. It took me a long time to get here. And for me, I would say to anyone who's curious about how I got here, just don't worry so much about that. I'll answer any question anyone asks me about my advice and this and that, but everyone has their own path, and I think that in the long run, it's perseverance that pays. It's the business beats you up. It's a very hard business. It's impossible to separate yourself from the product that you're selling. You are the product. So you've got to be healthy about it. You have to not disconnect those things, but not get personally offended when you're not chosen for every job that you audition for, when you're not chosen for 90% of the jobs that you audition for, when you're not chosen for 99% of the jobs that you audition for, which is the actual number. You have to find a way in your life outside of acting to feel good about that. I always encourage people, artists especially, to take in as much of the world as they can as a normal human being. Find love, find passion elsewhere, and bring that into your art. That's my little tidbit of advice for the up-and-comers.
Yeah, that's been a huge recurring theme, especially in the early episodes of our show and this the summer of 2020 was people realizing like I realized that I had no hobbies or nothing to keep them occupied apart from that constant hustle of acting in the early morning cattle calls and all of that, especially for actors here in New York. And people realize how bad they were at taking care of themselves too. Now that they finally had all the time in the world, they were like, oh, I was not. They would work out just to look good on stage. It wasn't necessarily for their health or for their well-being. That's been a huge theme for us here. Um, yeah, and Trevor, what about you? What comes to mind as a an obstacle or anything that you can shed some light on?
Yeah, I mean, going off a little bit of what Brent said, like I think the this idea of comparison and constantly like looking at looking at oneself and putting it up against this idea of what we think success looks like. I think what we see in the media is, kind of a very small percentage of what the reality actually is. And like, I can't even count on my hands the number of times, you go home to family gatherings and they're like, oh, what are you doing? What are you working on? And they think, if you're not Meryl Streep or Pedro Pascal in the new HBO show, then you're not really actually a working, successful actor. And so I think just remembering that, like, if you really love to do this, then any work is work that's worth doing, because, even an audition, going into a room, having 3, 4 pages to read, changing your point of view from going in to get the job, but rather changing your point of view so that it's 3 pages that I get to act. And if that's what I really love to do, then those 3 pages, then I'm getting to act. It doesn't really matter what else or, what this person's doing or how many jobs this person is booking or, how many jobs I've booked or what I missed out on. Because what really matters is that I'm doing what I love. And I feel like that's what life is really all about because it's pretty short and we don't get that much time. So you just want to be happy and have fun when you can because the world can also be a kind of a dark, scary, sad place. And so just try to make it a little brighter and, more joyful for yourself if you can.
If you had this sort of a Back to the Future moment, and we're gonna put time paradoxes and all of that to the side, pretend nothing is affected in the future, but if you could give your 13-year-old self a piece of advice, what would you say?
I would probably just tell myself that it was all going to be okay and work out. I mean, my 13-year-old self was in a darker place that I don't think I realized until later, and it was actually acting and the training and learning how to kind of access my own life as part of my craft that kind of illuminated that for me. And so this path actually ended up being the thing that kind of helped me become me and the best version of me. And so I probably would just tell myself that it'll work itself out.
I would I would tell 13-year-old Brent to learn how to play the piano. Yeah, I that's something that I always regret now, is not being a really good instrumentalist in some way. I understand music, I sing a lot, but I would love to have a deeper understanding of music theory and an ability to translate that to my fingertips. I bet it still feels like magic to me.
I'd say, well, first things I just say like calm down because I'm a very anxious person. So I just be like, okay, just like chill for a sec. But then after that, once I'd like maybe sat down, I'd probably say the parts of yourself that are different, the parts of yourself that are unique, are not the things you should shy away from or be afraid of, but are the things that you should embrace. Because the weird sort of quirks you have, the things that you maybe are trying to hide, are actually what make you special and make you shine.
Awesome. And before we go, we always wrap up with a quick game called Now That We Know You, since we've gotten to chat with y'all for a bit. So we're gonna go in the round. So Brent, fill in the blank.
Mhm.
If I
Mhm.
weren't working in the arts, I'd be.
A fly fisherman.
A fly fisherman. Interesting. Adam, what role have you had the most fun playing? The present one aside.
The present one aside.
Yeah.
Oh, probably Daverin in Shadow of a Gunman at Irish Rat.
Trevor, what is the best advice you've ever gotten?
Oh my gosh. Best advice I've ever gotten. Uh, Smile. My mom, just smile up there, give him a show.
Brent, what is the worst advice you've ever gotten?
You have to do it like that person.
Mm. Mm. Adam, if you could have dinner with any actor, dead or alive, who would it be?
Robin Williams.
Good choice. And this is for all three of you. Lastly, in 10 words or less, what advice would you give to a young actor?
Don't be so hard on yourself.
Believe in yourself, because you're the only yourself that you got.
Say, be honest with yourself.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. And again, congrats on such a great show. So everyone who is listening, everyone tuning in, you can all see these lovely gentlemen in The Play That Goes Wrong playing now at New World Stages. It's an open-ended run, correct? Like there's no, so you guys are just on forever until they say otherwise?
That's right.
Yep.
Fingers
We'll
crossed,
hear
baby.
a few weeks before we close.
And also, I mean, the franchise is expanding. So I know that there's already like there's a TV series that they did in the UK, and Peter Pan That Goes Wrong, or Peter Pan Goes Wrong, coming very soon to Broadway. So everyone make sure to check that out as well. I'm curious though, before we go, would any of you, if they decided one day we're gonna do the musical That Goes Wrong, are you guys there? Would you dive in immediately?
1,000%. 1,000%. And I've got lots of great ideas.
Better at it.
Cover in by Brent Bateman. And before we go, on social media, if any of our fans want to give you guys a follow, where can they find you?
I'm at adam.petherbridge on Instagram. That's my main social media.
I'm at Trevor Harrison Braun on Instagram.
And I'm at Brent A. Bateman on Instagram if you want to follow a really boring account.
Awesome. And folks, you know the drill. You can find us at Actors with Issues on Instagram. Follow me at Juaniala Official and subscribe to our show on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts for new episodes every single week. I'm Juaniala. This is Actors with Issues, and we'll see you next week.